Hi everyone, welcome to my new series where I make languages inspired by ideas I think have missed potential. In this first season, I'll be creating a speculative future language descended from English. I'm Misali, and this is retconlang. In this first video, I'm just gonna plan out some general things, so I won't be doing any specific design details just yet. Also, anything I come up with is extremely subject to change. I can and probably will change my mind about anything and go back and change stuff. You know, in the spirit of this being retconlang, I think it's only fitting to have room for that sort of thing. Anyway, right, the idea here is based loosely on this conlang called Futurese, which is a pretty underdeveloped thing that's supposed to be a language descended from General American English spoken in the year 3000. I put a link in the description to where you can read about that. I made a video about it too, but that video was not very good. So the idea for my future English conlang is that it's a descendant of Inland North American English spoken in the year 2983. Inland North American English being the dialect of English that I speak. Side note, I do not like that name. I think it's very misleading. This is North America. This is the region of North America which is inland, and this is where Inland North American English is spoken. So from here on out, I'll be calling it Great Lakes English instead. Great Lakes English is spoken in the region just south of the American Great Lakes, which include cities like Milwaukee, Chicago, Detroit, Cleveland, Buffalo, Rochester, and Syracuse. This region is sometimes grouped in with some Canadian cities to the north of the Great Lakes and referred to as the very cool-sounding Great Lakes Megalopolis. Specifically because I like how cool the name Great Lakes Megalopolis sounds, I decided to call my conlang Megalopolian, even though there's cities where Great Lakes English isn't spoken, like Toronto and Montreal, that are still part of the Great Lakes Megalopolis. The most distinctive feature of Great Lakes English is the Northern Cities vowel shift, a sound shift that just shuffles all the vowels around. It's the reason why when I say the word solid, some people think it sounds kind of like I'm saying salad. There's several individual parts to the NCVS, and not every Great Lakes English speaker does all of them. It varies a lot from city to city. This table here is showing the Great Lakes pronunciations of the vowels relevant to the NCVS in the most advanced version of the shift. My own pronunciation of these vowels is pretty close to this, though my strut vowel is definitely not that.
Now, this is spectacular.
Bosses.
Everybody writes down what?
Bosses.
Right. The guy.
Yeah.
The bosses with the antennas.
And now you begin to wonder, what are these
the bosses with the antennas
that are carrying?
I can remember vaguely when we had the bosses with the antennas on the top.
So bosses has become bosses.
Right.
In this full version of the shift, vowels are moved around to the extent that they can be misheard as different vowel phonemes to people without the shift. It's not really that noticeable in context, though, because it's not that hard to adjust to someone else's pronunciations of words. Kind of like how you can rotate the colors in an image and you can still tell what it is, rotating vowels around in vowel space usually doesn't make words harder to understand. Anyway, if we assume that the full version of the NCVS not only stays stable, but also spreads further than its current domain, the Great Lakes English starting point has something like this as its vowel inventory, plus a few reduced vowels and some allophony. Oh, I should also clarify that the split between Y's and price as two separate vowels isn't a thing specific to Great Lakes English. That's a shift I like to call price raising, found throughout northern US and Canada. I can get into some more of the specifics of all these vowels in future videos when I'm talking about how they can develop further from here. But one thing I'd like to point out is that since the NCVS exists in slightly different forms in different parts of the Great Lakes region, that could be used as a source of variation between different dialects of the eventual Megalopolian language. So I'll have to keep that in mind. Now, if you're familiar with the history of the English language, you might notice a parallel between the Northern Cities vowel shift and another significant sound shift, the Great Vowel Shift. Just like how the Great Vowel Shift is what defines the start of modern English, the Northern Cities vowel shift is what separates Great Lakes English from General American English. I guess presenting it as a linear timeline like this isn't that great. I mean, first of all, it's completely ignoring all the other languages and dialects that branch off at each of these points. Also, calling modern English modern probably doesn't work from the perspective of someone in the distant future. To that first point, Megalopolian is not the future form of the English language. It's one of many English languages spoken in 2983. And yeah, I probably should work out some details of the other major English languages at some point for this project. And to the other point, here's my sketch of the full timeline for the development of Megalopolian, from the perspective of someone in the late 30th century. I think calling modern English Imperial English instead makes sense, as it's the language of the British Empire. You'll notice that I have Megalopolian divided up into stages, Old, Middle, and Modern. The year 2983 2983 is as far into the future as the year 1059 was in the past. 1059 was a few years before the Norman invasion in 1066, putting it at the later end of the Old English period. Quite a bit after Beowulf, but also quite a bit before Chaucer. So any English language spoken in the late 30th century would be as different from the language I'm speaking now as this language is from the Old English spoken in the mid 11th century. With that amount of time to deal with, working it out in stages just makes more sense. First, Great Lakes English to Old Megalopolian, then Old Megalopolian to Middle Megalopolian, then Middle Megalopolian to Modern Megalopolian, then finally from Modern Megalopolian to the specific form of Modern Megalopolian spoken in 2983. For each of those stages, I gotta figure out a few things. Mainly, how the phonology develops, how the vocabulary changes, and pretty importantly, how the grammar changes. To be able to do that properly, I'll also need to work out some external things. How will the various cultures of the Great Lakes megalopolis change over the course of 1,000 years? How will other English languages influence the Megalopolian language? What about other language families? There are a few specific world-building related details that I do already have figured out, which of course I can flesh out more later. Imperial English stays preserved, at least in some form. I mean, a language can't become a billion-person lingua franca and then just completely disappear, you know? I think it makes sense for it to have a similar role in this future as Latin does now. It could even be used as a source for international vocabulary. Then one related question is how long the idea of a singular common English language lasts. Which languages get recognized as separate from English first? I mean, besides Scots. And I guess also not including the various English-based pidgins and creoles. Past the point where languages are no longer mutually intelligible, how long do they hold on to a common written language? I think that Megalopolian drops the quote-unquote imperial spellings and gains its own orthography sometime in the middle Megalopolian period. But what about other English languages? Maybe there's some that never get a spelling reform and hold on to the same orthography we're using now all the way into 2980s. I'd also like to figure out some technological advancements. Those do happen to be a common reason for new vocabulary to be introduced and for existing vocabulary to shift in meaning. See the current use of the word phone. For a while, I was pretty sure that this future would be one where an artificial general intelligence has taken over the world, but dang, that would be such a bummer of a future. I'll come up with something. Oh, and speaking of bummers, there's a certain ongoing global crisis, no, not that ongoing global crisis, the other one, that's going to dramatically and violently change the geopolitical landscape. So, just gotta predict the extent to which global warming will alter the demographics of this specific part of the world, specifically in terms of how it relates to language. Nothing that can go wrong there. Also, what about space travel? Seems kinda inevitable that at some point in the next 1,000 years there will be some sort of permanent settlements off the planet. What sorts of languages do they speak on the moon or on Mars? How do they influence the English languages spoken terrestrially? There's a lot of fun directions I could take this in, and I intend to explore all the most interesting ones before this series is over. As I've said before, I have no idea how often you should expect new videos in the series. I'll just be working on Megalopolian as a side project as I'm doing my usual videos, and I'll give you an update whenever I have enough details to fill a new video. Until then, let me know if there's any other things you'd like to see explored in this season. I promise you won't have to wait as long for the next episode as you did for this one. I've got a lot of other completely unrelated stuff I've been working on, so you'll see that pretty soon, but eventually you will get another update on this conlang project. Before I go, thank you so much to everyone who bought my new album, Disambiguation. Apparently, some people think it's good. No idea how that happened. Anyway, I've been Misali. I don't have a sign-off for this series yet.
Blackgill. I'm a bit excited because Blackgill has so many vowels, there's so many vowels, there's languages Blackgill. I'm a bit excited because this episode is a first in a few ways. Blackgill.